very excited to be here and finally be able to realize this great idea we had. When I first started using Google+, I could see the great potential of the platform, and in those first couple of weeks I had a few sleepless nights, as some of you probably had too. Through the numerous hangouts I had in the beginning, I already made great friendships. It's because of those friendships that this has become possible. Then came the photo community, which seemed to quickly embrace this new tool for sharing and interacting, and suddenly the vision of sharing my passion with photographers from around the world became reality. Now we're sitting here in this hangout talking about photography using this novel technology. The intention is to create a photo show that revolves around very in-depth conversations. This doesn't mean we'll overlook the beginners, because those who think they're still not ready. We built this around the concept that everyone, beginner or pro, is constantly learning, constantly willing to expand their horizons. We hope to continue inviting interesting people so we can have meaningful conversations on the subjects we, as photographers, care about. Although photography is a broad and general term, we will endeavor to discuss specific topics each week. Tonight's subject is the question whether or not there are similarities between two seemingly very different genres. Landscape and architecture are two forms of photography that can't better represent the famous words by Ansel Adams. You don't take pictures, you make them. He is, of course, the seminal American photographer, considered to be the master of landscape photography of the 20th century. Before we begin to try to answer this question, I would like to go around the room and let everyone introduce themselves. I'll begin with myself, I guess. Well, as you probably gathered, my name is Maximilian Majewski. I'm currently living in Germany, and my main focus is architecture. However, we have far more interesting people in here. So let's start with Craig, who you can't see now because I guess we can see him. Sorry.
Absolutely. We'll start with the least interesting of the panel. I shoot events primarily for my community portal websites, and you can learn more about me at CraigShipp.com.
All right, Jim.
Hey everybody, my name is Jim Davis. I'm from Ontario, Canada. My specialty is nature landscapes, although I do other types of photography, but I've been shooting for about 25 years. I incorporate a lot of the activities that I do into it, whether it be canoeing, backpacking, or just whatever, anything to do with nature. That's what I like to do. So.
And before we move on, excuse me, because Jim, you can at this point perhaps mention the hangout with Shane yesterday, since we promised him to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Shane and Ali had their photographers weekly hangout last night, and I joined in with them. You know, I have to say they're a great couple of guys, and we had a good time talking and just talking about our photography. So I'd recommend everybody else to check them out. They start on Monday nights at 9.
And did they record it, or it was only live stream?
Yes, they had it recorded, and they live stream as well with Keith Barrett.
All right, great. So I guess we can put the link in later. So Cassius and Jordana we have here from Illinois, right?
Yes, I am Cassius Wright. This is my lovely wife, Jordana Wright. We are based in the United States in the state of Illinois. And we focus on portraiture as well as landscapes, architectures, and artistic abstracts.
And she's the photographer. You're the business side.
I am the business side. She is the talented side. So it is what it is.
All right, thank you. Then Helen from Greece.
Yes, hello. I'm Helen Sotiriadis. I'm based in Athens, Greece. I'm an architect and a photographer, and I do a lot of teaching, instruction for Autodesk products, AutoCAD and Photoshop. And I refuse to specialize in anything. I'll shoot anything that's in my way, so be careful.
Thank you. You were also at the Olympic Games, I understand.
I was, yes, I was. I had an infinity pass. I got to go everywhere. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great. Maybe you can say a little more about that later. Yep. Then we have Hugo from Italy. Am I correct?
Yes, that's actually Ugo, if you want to pronounce it correctly. And Anyway, anything goes. No, never mind. I'm an amateur photographer from Italy. I mostly shoot landscape, cityscape, nature, travel. My job brings me a bit around Europe, so I always try to bring the camera with me and shoot whatever interests me.
That's great. But at this
And
point,
thanks for having me on the show.
yes, of course. And you were the first one asking a question, so
Yeah.
that got your pass right there. But at this point, let's not distinguish between amateurs and pros. We're all photographers.
Good. Okay. Keep that in mind.
So tonight's subject, landscape and architecture photography. And since I'm an architecture photographer, I'm not an architect like Helen. I didn't know you're an architect.
Yeah, yes, I am.
Oh, that's why you teach AutoCAD. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because who in the right mind would teach AutoCAD if they're not using it?
Yeah, no, it was a hobby. It turned into a profession. It was,
So you never studied architecture, or you did?
of course I did. Yes, I'm on art. I studied in the Technical University of Athens.
But you don't build stuff. You only teach now.
I have, but I've also been teaching for 20 some years. But what I'm saying is AutoCAD started as a hobby because when I started it, hardly anybody knew it back then. It's a long time ago.
You started when you were 6 years old?
No. I was like 28 or something.
Okay, well, thank you for that joke, Craig. Or sarcasm, rather.
He was trying to
So,
pay compliments.
Yes, I'm sure we will when we see your great work as well. So, why did I choose this topic? Basically, I thought there are some similarities since, as when you do architecture photography, it's all about lines and shapes and all kinds of elements, lighting, and as well the environment in which the building is, that you're trying to photograph. And to my understanding, the few times I tried landscape, and I find it absolutely hard. Although I think there is some similarities because when I go to a city, when I go to take a picture of some modern building, it's kind of easy because, okay, you recognize the lines, you recognize the shape of the building, you recognize what it's supposed to mean in the surrounding it's built in. And with nature, I guess I thought, okay, there is something similar when you take a picture of some rock formation or a mountain. It's kind of similar because nature, like us humans, have made that happen over millions of years. Only with humans it takes a few years only nowadays, but a rock takes millions of years of hard work from nature. And when you look at some pictures from Jim, you'll see that, for instance, the last image in the intro with that boulder in the sea, I think that very much if you take that metaphorically and say, okay, imagine that boulder would be a modern skyscraper in a city, then you will see, okay, in relation to that skyscraper is kind of standing out like that boulder in the sea, and your eyesight is directly directed to that. And then you think, okay, in the background you have that sunlight coming down and kind of shining onto that boulder and even making it even more stand out. And then I thought, okay, if you look at that picture, and then if you look at some images of the Louvre Museum in Paris with the glass pyramid, and you have the sun shining through that glass pyramid, you have kind of the same picture if you strip it down to the basic elements of shape and lines and lighting. But I don't know if you guys can maybe let's start with Jim. If you have let's see if you have one picture that kind of illustrates what I just said.
I can put up the image that was in the intro.
Yeah,
that way everyone will have a better.
Again, so the audience can see what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So there you see that. I thought also that was a great closing image for the intranet because it's the last, but you know, as they say, last but not least. I thought it's a great atmosphere in that image because it's kind of, I don't know if this is. Let's take a guess, everyone. If this is sunset or sunrise. Because I don't think you can tell, but okay.
I don't think you can. I'm not. I have no idea if you can tell.
I would say.
I don't see why one should be able to tell. I have no idea.
Well, just take a wild guess. Just take a wild guess.
Sunset.
I will say that it's a sunset.
Funny. I'm the only one saying sunrise, okay? Ugo, what's your guess?
Sunset.
Okay. Craig?
Sunrise.
Thank you. So what is it, Jim? At what hour of the day?
That is a sunrise, and that would be approximately 7:30 in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
No, Jim,
Such a
that was an
dedicated
easy one to guess because he's a morning guy.
That's right.
Who, me? No.
Actually, I'm an all-day guy. I go and go and go. But yes, that was morning, sunrise.
See, sometimes there were days since Google Plus I don't even recognize morning or evening because I was up all day. But back to the picture. Oh, now you took it away.
I can put it back up if you like, but if you'd like to explain a little bit more about it.
Yeah, please.
Or if you want me to explain anything about it, I could probably explain the process that I used to take that picture and maybe a little bit about it. This was part of a 5-day trip that I did in Bruce Peninsula in Ontario. Very beautiful location. This image here was one that normally when I get home from a shoot, I know what I have. I know what images I'm going to get to first, and this was one that I had passed over. I didn't really see the potential in it, but after looking at it for a week and you know, I started to see some potential in it. But this is actually a 5-image exposure blend, which I did obviously to catch the dynamic range between the boulder, which is fairly dark in the foreground, and the sky in the background, which was relatively bright. You can see just over the boulder, there's, you know, quite a hot spot there. It's not quite fully blown, but it's pretty close. But my intent with this image was to show the strength of the boulder by increasing the contrast in it and really making it stick out of the image. It's kind of right there in your face. Coupled with the dark clouds and then the bright sunlight with the sun rays coming down on it. So for me, it was a very striking scene that I wanted to portray in that way, a very strong scene.
All right, and it's now I remember the word I was going to use before, the word precise, because that's what I see as a connection between landscape and architecture photography. They both require precision in terms of perspective and where you're standing, and it makes a whole difference how you portray the building or the landscape or the mountain range you're taking a photo of. And let me show you, let me share my screen here. Let's see, 1 second, I need to move my Hangout window, so share screen, and there. That was the image I had in mind. And when I saw your boulder image, and then, of course, okay, this is a totally different subject. However, if you strip it down to the very basics, the lines and the way the light falls into the picture, you kind of have the same atmosphere in my mind. Although this is a sunset, if I remember correctly. This was in the evening, yeah. And I don't know what you guys think now, because I've been talking now for a few minutes. So perhaps we can have some of your opinions now about what you see in terms of connection between architecture and landscape photography, and Let's take the word precise. I mean, what does that mean to you when you take a picture of a building or a picture of a landscape? Maybe Cash, yeah, Jordana, you wanted to say something.
Sure.
My approach is definitely very similar between landscapes and architecture photography. It's always about perspective. I'm really into converging lines, so typically I'll get as close to something as I can. I love to use wide-angle lenses because it really accentuates those lines and the form and, I don't know, textures.
Basically, as far as precision goes, anytime that we find ourselves on a location shooting for architectural purposes or for landscape purposes, we find that the precision is absolutely the correct word. You have to make sure that all the technical elements within the camera are correct, obviously, but it's more than that in terms of lining up the shot so that the lines that converge do so in an interesting and compelling way throughout the frame, as opposed to everything just goes up or everything just goes one direction or the other. So it's important with both of these styles that you observe your surroundings in their entirety and see what you can do to help compose your image to draw the viewer's eye through the frame.
What is actually, when you take a picture of a building or a landscape, what is it actually you want to draw the viewer's eye to? Is it something very obvious, or is it something more metaphorical? Or are your images very straightforward and you don't want some philosophical understanding?
I think it varies a lot from based on a type of architecture. I mean, if you're in a city, it's obviously very much about the height of the building. So I shoot a lot of vertical orientation, so you can draw upward with the buildings. If it's something like out in the Midwest, everything is very, very flat. So if it's like a barn or something, then typically it's more about showing the expanse of the land and then how the architecture fits within it.
All right, thank you. I think Jim put it down in the chat. Maybe we should take Ugo's question to get started here before we lose some direction here. So I'll read the question here. Hugo asks, is there anything in landscape photography that we haven't seen yet? Well, it's a two-part question actually. So one unexplored niches can an aspiring landscape photographer explore to find something new?
So that's something that I always try to have a quest for, or try to achieve, is to find something new. In this day and age, with the amount of photographers that are out there, and everybody's attracted to the parks, the national monuments, that type of thing. And they are for a reason. They're parks for a reason, because there's something that is very significant about the landscape. So everybody's attracted to those, and I do still go to shoot those, but I try to get a different perspective on it. And what I'll do is as I'm talking about it, I will put up a couple of images, or at least one image of a perspective that that a lot of people may know this place, but they haven't shot it maybe in the way that I tried to portray it here. And I actually have a few of them. But this is Delicate Arch in Utah. Most of them you see are daytime, sunset, showing it with the background in. And what I did on this image is I waited for everybody to leave, because it's a very popular spot, and I wanted to capture it at night, with the twilight, the stars in the background. So by illuminating it with the speed lights, I made it became very, very dramatic structure within the background of the sky, and really makes it stand out, and the strength of Delicate Arch itself. And I think this kind of fits in with the architectural, the comparison between architecture and our natural environment or landscape photography is I mean, this is a structure, and sometimes architects do imitate nature in their buildings. So I think that something like this is very appropriate.
Jim, it
So
seems,
as far as
to just interject real quick, it seems like to me that if you were trying to photograph a building, that would be a good technique if you're in an area where there's a lot of junk around, if you will, that you don't want in the picture. You could light the building and then do the same thing you did, where you take the picture and the building's very striking, and then you just have the whole background can just be a starlit night, and then all of a sudden you've gotten rid of things that you didn't want in the picture in the first place.
Right. So to continue on with the, answering the question as far as, so getting those places that are kind of cliche or normally shot, try to do something different with them. One of the other things, the unexplored niches for aspiring landscape photographers is, look for the not the ordinary. Go to places that people don't go to, that photographers don't go to. Look for something new, different perspectives, things like that. So that's something that I'm always on the lookout for. And I do a lot of wilderness canoeing to places that a lot of people don't even go to. So that's something that I can find for myself that I can call my own, so to speak. So that's what I would recommend to photographers. Everybody, you want to go to those very popular places to capture them, but also look at the unpopular places.
The places that are dangerous to get to.
That's right. The dramatic landscapes and
if you're about to kill yourself, then you know you're on the right track.
Yeah. So, Ugo, did that does that answer your question, or did you have anything you wanted to add to that? I think
we can't hear you. You're muted. No.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think, yeah, Jim, I think your answer was spot on. When I was talking about niches, I wasn't talking about specific places or location that nobody ever visits. That's interesting, but I was mostly referring to what kind of techniques or styles or approaches we can find. And definitely doing light painting at night of popular spots, which is normally shot during the day at sunrise or sunset. And everybody has done that. Everybody has been to Tunnel View or Delicate Arch and took that picture many, many times. So your approach is definitely new as far as I can tell. So I would like to, if anyone else here has any other examples of, I know some innovative style which goes beyond the traditional landscape picture, calendar picture, which are very nice, very pretty, but we've all seen them many times.
May I interject here? Before we, because I asked Helen to prepare some photos here, to talk a bit about the architecture side a little, and finding unusual perspectives. And allow me, Helen, to show two photos before I give it over to you, because let's see here. And taking the Louvre as an example again, here is a very, come on, is it loading? Is it showing? Oh yeah, okay, now it's showing. This is a very standard view, let's say. This is a view of the Louvre that almost every photographer has done a million times over. Maybe not this very angle, but this is kind of what every photographer tries to do. And so let's see, okay, taking the same building where the Louvre is not in the center of the building, however, you still know it's a Louvre, although this is inside from the Apple store, actually, in the underneath the Louvre. So, which is an unusual location to shoot the Louvre, because, okay, who would think to go into the Apple store, look up, and take a picture of the Louvre Museum? And now this is my contribution to this question. So, and Helen, maybe you have something to show as well of the Louvre,
Yes.
which you think is unusual as a perspective.
Okay, I'll share the screen. The first shot is about as classic an image as I have of the Louvre.
Yeah.
This is what somebody would call a calendar shot. Okay. This next image is it's taking the light of the sunset and trying to accentuate that. Here I have a composition of the Louvre with the pyramid. I call this Stand By Me, and it's like they're trying to come to terms with their coexistence in a way. And then I wanted to do
one quick question. Sorry, the previous photo you showed with the sunset. What
the
was
light?
that? Yeah.
That was the pyramid. That was the pyramid, but looking out towards the entrance.
Yeah. Which lens did you use for that? Maybe that's interesting for some viewers.
I use a 10-22 for my wide angles. Canon 10-22. Okay. On my 40D.
And what's that? That's a Canon lens or what? Or Nikon?
Excuse me. That's a Canon. It's a Canon.
Okay, yeah, because I was confused.
Yeah. And then, of course, you try and think of what I can do with this pyramid. So I took this shot, which is a manipulation of the pyramid, just a viewpoint. It's actually the reflection and then turned 90 degrees. So it's still a pyramid shot, but it's sort of weird. I used the shapes as raw materials to do something else. I'm not really interested in the Louvre per se here. I'm just trying to make a different sort of composition.
And that
that's beautiful. Thank you. And sorry, please.
I was just going to add to Helen's picture that comes back to the whole idea of using the lines in a way that draws the eye through the frame. This is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, you have something to contribute to that?
Yeah, I wanted to put up an image that I feel it would be almost the ultimate, at least in my perspective, because I am a landscape photographer, but the ultimate relationship between architecture and landscape. And I will share it right now because I feel that these two are completely integrated together. So what we have here,
absolutely.
We have here is a cliff. This is in Canyon de Chelly, Arizona. And this is what would have been the Pueblo Indians and then later the Navajo Indian ruins, which is built into the landscape, and they've used the landscape around them to build the structure within the landscape. So yeah. I feel that this is I mean, with this image, when you look at it, you see the staining of the rock as the water has come down, which kind of draws you down into the architecture that they've built there, as well as using this natural alcove here to put their structure in to protect them from the elements. They've also, if you look at why did they build their structure up into that alcove? Was there something that they were afraid of maybe down below, or was there flooding? Possibility of flooding, so they built it up into there. So the relationship there between that, I think, is very important in human history.
And the funny thing is, modern architecture is going that direction again. They're trying to do the opposite of what we've been doing the last 100 years. Now they want to do this ecological architecture and doing the same thing these Navajo Indians did hundreds of years ago. Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know what this place is called, White House Ruins, and this is obviously, it's a famous place that Ansel Adams shot, back in his day. So and that's what drew me there, because I was always a fan of Ansel Adams, and I had to get to White House Ruins and shoot the same thing. So
I have a similar shot that I could follow that up with that one. I have a night. I'm not sure how this is going to show up on the screen. This is a night shot of it's a spot outside of Athens, about an hour's drive away. What you're seeing is it's a peninsula on which they built an ancient temple. It's called it's a temple dedicated to Poseidon. You can see this. You can see the sunset and the sunrise, and you're just surrounded by water while you're there, and it's just immense and beautiful. And I love this place. I return to this place very often to shoot. This is a double exposure.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
I was going to say Poseidon, the Greek god
of the sea. Yes, it's exactly that. Right. That's why it's there. And this, yes. This I have another shot from this place. This is the moon coming up right behind the temple. I don't know how clear you can see it. This was shot from.
Clear. It's
very nice.
It's great.
This is from very far away with my. Oh, actually, this was a lens, a 500mm lens that I borrowed from a friend who does this a lot.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just this place is just beautiful with the sky and the sea, and it's natural, and it's got architecture, and it's historical, and it's marvelous.
Sorry, what temple is this? Oh, what was it?
It was a temple dedicated to Poseidon. It was a religious temple. There's actually structures, lesser structures built under the hill, but a religious temple is what it is.
All right, cool.
Helen, I loved your Louvre images, especially the ones with unusual angles, especially, and the one with the Louvre flipped to it on its side with the pyramid reflecting. And this prompted me thought about the similarities between landscape photography and architectural photography. And correct me if I'm wrong, but with architectural photography, especially when you are photographing modern buildings, it's usual to see strange, unusual angles, extreme angles, and not so much with landscape photography, which, while it's normally very important to keep the horizon very straight, you might see some instances of extreme angles in landscape photography, but probably not so often. Am I right?
I think you're pretty spot on. Yeah, with that. I don't remember seeing very many unusual angles in landscape photography.
I just wanted to take a moment to welcome Martin Bailey to this, our first show, photohangouts.com, and they're talking about the similarities between landscape photography and architectural photography. And then once we finish this discussion, we want to have a brief discussion with you about your photo walks, and we also want to congratulate you on that milestone, that 300th podcast, and hear a little bit about that. But I'll go back to Max now.
Sure.
Yeah, just to follow up with the last images that Helen showed, brings me to another question we had here from Dalian Listhrop. I hope I pronounced that correctly. What's the best way to shoot landscape at night with the moonlight as your only source of light, yet maintaining a low ISO? Perhaps you, Helen, can please explain to us how you took those images.
I have a friend who specializes in this thing, in this kind of shot, the moon with, or the sun with the moon mostly with structures, human structures. His name is Anthony Ayomamitis. I'm a big fan. And he does a lot of calculations to get it correct. What he tends to do is he tries to shoot when the moon is full and it's rising up low on the landscape while the sun is setting. So it's still twilight. There's still a great deal of light. And you can do it. You can do a shot that's well illuminated with relatively low ISO. When it's really dark, when it's night, I have no idea how to get a single exposure and get the moon to show any sort of detail. You know, I have no idea. You usually have to work around the twilight hours when it's just set. It looks blue and the moon is rising, and that's a good time because it's low on the horizon, and you can mix it with your landscapes or your structures.
But that of course is dependent on where you are in the world, because in some places the moon never rises that high before it's going that dark. So it's either when you're too very south or very north, like in Sweden, you can have that. I don't know. You could
around the full moon, it's on the opposite end of the world, isn't it?
Yeah. Can I add something on this?
Please.
The moon itself is basically reflecting the light of the sun, right? So to get a well-exposed moon, if we're talking about getting a well-exposed moon and forget about the rest of the scene, it's actually very easy because it's very bright. But if the question, I imagine, is how to get the foreground elements also relatively bright. And for that, I mean, if you want to keep the ISO down, if you use the exposure triangle of, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, then if you want one to be low, you've got to increase one of the others. So you're either going to have to go with your widest aperture and or a longer shutter speed, right? So the answer really is going to be just, I mean, whenever I do any moonlit shots, I just go with a really long shutter speed, and it actually works effectively because if you've got water in the scene, it'll make it all go smooth and stuff like that. So,
It depends on your lens. It depends on your lens. If you have a very wide lens, you can get away with that. But if you're doing a telephoto shot like the one I shot with moon behind the temple, you can't. That moon moves really fast.
Yeah, if that's obviously, yeah.
You're gonna get a blurry moon.
Yeah.
As well.
Excuse me, just a quick question, Craig. Because I didn't check the time we started, can you please give us an update on our time?
Well, let me see here. We've recorded 37 minutes so far.
So we're actually at the limit we wanted to be at.
Well, I think this is our first show, so if we go over just a little bit, I don't think you're going to...
Well, then at this point, I'm sorry. I want to ask Cassius and Jordana to, because they prepared some photos that compare quite well architecture and landscape. So if you can please bring that up, that PDF you showed us earlier before we recorded.
Yeah, sure. Would you like converging lines looking up as a perspective or architecture as a component of the landscape?
The second one, I think, is more appropriate now.
Okay. Looking up it is. It's just a sec here. Do you guys have it?
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. I'll let Jordana take this.
Okay. Basically, what I was trying to do here was to draw some parallels between the two styles of photography. I do a lot of architecture and a lot of landscape, and one of the things that I typically find is very important is to get a new perspective. Something that I really like to do is to get very close to the base of an object, whether that be a building or a tree, and look directly upward. I think that that allows us to find a new way of looking at things. So here you'll see that 300 Impressive Street, that is in Chicago, and that's like this gorgeous giant building. And from straight on, it's actually pretty boring to look at, but when you get the perspective of all the converging lines of the mullions between the glass windows and the curve of the building, it really gives it something extra. That's also one of my favorite ways to look at a tree because you get the concept and the texture of the bark as you go up. So these are just all different images that I took from the perspective of looking directly up. One of the ones that is one of my favorite images is in the top right hand corner called From the Hobo's Crack, Plate 1. This is actually in Ottawa. This is a convention center, and what you see at the bottom of the frame is a elevator that's like enclosed in a tube, and it was really boring to look at from dead on. It was just an elevator door. And then I noticed that there was a crack between the elevator structure and the actual building. So I kind of slithered my way back there and looked directly up. And this was just a completely unique perspective that I don't really think that many people get. So I think that regardless of whether or not you're doing landscape or architecture, it's super important to just try to find a new way of looking at the same things, like Jim was talking about before, that are frequently photographed. And you know, there's always a way to put your own mark on it.
Thank you very much. I have one image to follow up with that. Talking about perspective, let me just share my screen. I don't know if you guys know this famous landmark in Brussels, the Atomium. The Atomium was built for the World Exhibition in 1954, I believe. I don't know, I'm sure it's 52 or 55 or 56. I'm not sure anyway, but it's basically supposed to look like an atom, and that's why it's called atomium. And so it has these silver balls, which are kind of attached to each other with these with the structure. And so from far away, it looks like an atom. And I thought, okay, you always have these hallmark pictures of the whole landmark in its environment, because it's standing in this huge alley, no, that's not the right word I'm looking for, but okay, it's this huge big road with trees on the sides, and I thought, okay, I was looking for an interesting angle there, and I thought, okay, let's walk around a little. That's what I do usually, and then I standing underneath it, and I thought, okay, let's forget the atom metaphor and the visual of that, and let's see the reflections and just the structural design of it, the industrial design of the whole landmark. And so I came up with this image where you can see in the upper corner, you can see actually the reflection of the other balls. So in a way, you have the whole structure in one image, but the focus is not the whole structure itself, rather the design of it. And then again, that's also the question you have to ask yourself. Do you want to show the building and its surrounding, or do you want to show the building in itself and examine a very specific detail of the design? And I'll give it over to Helen, who said she wants to, she has something to follow up to, and then after that, we'll wrap it up. And Martin Bailey, he will be the add-on to this first episode, but that what he's talking about will have nothing to do with tonight's topic. So Helen, please.
Okay, yeah, this image is Paris again. This is a different point of view of what's normally taken of this structure. This is the Arch De Triomphe. You usually see it from far away, but I'm looking up. But the thing I wanted to point out here is that I'm very close to the wall. If you can see the top right section, I'm very close to the wall, so you can see an intense perspective there, and you sort of feel the depth, and you can sort of position the viewer with respect to the structure. So it's very important to do this. This is looking up. This next image here is something that's similar, but here I'm very, very close to the ground. I've put my camera down to the ground. Again, you see the Sacré-Cœur, but you see the perspective, and you know where you are with relation to this, and you see the depth. And this last bit I wanted to show here, again, this is a play on this sort of thing. This is Beijing. This is a structure that's often prized for its reflection in the pool. It does a beautiful egg shape. It makes a complete elliptical oval. But I went close to the wall. I wanted to show the immensity of the area, and again, I wanted to position myself with relation to the space. So yeah, I get into awkward positions. That's funny.
You
Yeah, there was a note here in the chat. Yeah. but I think it's very important to convey where you are when you're taking an image. In some cases, you want to do details, you want to do overviews, but also you want to place the viewer in the spot with you and just sort of have fun with him and look at just this place. It's just so beautiful, and you're here with me. This is what I want to communicate.
What was that? The aquatic center or what? No, that's
no. This is the National Theater in Beijing.
Ah, yes, right. I reckon. Yeah,
you actually enter the structure from underneath, and it's surrounded completely with this pool. So if you get there, do a long exposure and get a smooth reflection. It's just gorgeous.
Absolutely.
So that's what I wanted to say about perspective. And
yes, thank you for that. And I think well, that wraps up our tonight's show and the subject we had. If anyone has any closing comments on the matter, or not.
Well, while they're thinking about that, we'll go straight to Martin Bailey.
I'd say have fun with everything. I wanted to say have fun with everything and just don't worry too much about rules and recipes.
Yes. But like that song, don't worry, be happy. Yeah, like Craig said,
absolutely. Everybody just gather your thoughts a little bit, and in the meantime, we'll switch over to Martin Bailey. And the reason I asked him to come in tonight is I've always been a fan, and he just surpassed 300 episodes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Big milestone there.
And I've always enjoyed your shows, and I've enjoyed. Do you call them contests, or how do you term your when people put in photos and?
We call that an assignment. Basically, it's when there's a relatively large community built up around my podcast and forum, so. We every month we select a subject and just make that the assignment for the month, and I think a lot of people go out and shoot for it, and then the ones that get something that they can share, put it into our members gallery, and we all vote on it. I built a voting system around the members gallery, so the community votes on it and selects the winners. So it's a good bit of fun, and I find that people tend to learn a little bit about it when they're pushed out of their usual comfort zones as well.
Absolutely, and yeah, I was listening to one of your podcasts the other day, and I noticed that one of your photos was like in number 4 position or something like that, and so that's really interesting that it's the community that votes on these pictures.
Right. I don't enter every month, and when I do, I mean, we enter anonymously. Without sort of jumping through a few hoops. There's no way to see who uploaded the images, so there's no bias in the voting, which is great. But sometimes I think I've won once, and last month I was in 3rd place. But it's just a bit of fun, and then it's always nice to get a few votes from the community, but. I don't join every month. I simply don't have, even though I'm setting it up, I don't have time to join every month, unfortunately.
And talking briefly about community, sorry, Craig, may I ask a question about Google Plus? Since you're on here and you talk about community and your community around your podcast, how do you see the community here on Google Plus? Do you, as compared to Flickr and other platforms that for myself, it has been. As the community has been so interactive and so really willing to share their passion for photography.
Yeah, I think that it doesn't matter where you put a photographer, they're always going to be passionate about what they do and share with that passion. But I totally agree. Google Plus has been pretty incredible. I signed up. I received an invite, I think, in June. And it's been just late June, it must have been, or early July. But as soon as I signed up, I noticed that there were a lot of photographers on here. I think that Google's got it right with the way they've implemented the albums to to share images directly or just link to them to external sites, and it all looks good. So photographers have jumped on that pretty quickly, and I think that, you know, just the way you can address each other and stuff like that, it's helped it to take off, and I'm sure that this is just the beginning. I would think that Google has a lot of plans for this this base that they've built. Hopefully, one that includes more human readable usernames.
Martin, the other question I wanted to ask is, it's always fascinating when somebody lives in an exotic area, and you live in Japan. And for those of us that are on the other side of the world, you can't get a whole lot more exotic than that. Can you tell us what it's like to be there, and a little bit about the walks that you do?
It's kind of difficult because I've lived here for 20 years. It's like half my life, most of my adult life I've been here. So I don't really see it as quite as exotic as you know, someone that doesn't live here might. But the things, I mean, we do for the last 4 years now. I've been doing workshops or tours / workshops we call them, and we take a bunch of photographers every year up to, well, first we go over to photograph the snow monkeys in Nagano, and then we jump on a plane and go up to the northern island, Hokkaido. And they're I mean, they're not really photo walks in the sense that, you know, Scott Kelby's 1-day thing. They're a 12-day, you know, it's like a holiday / photographic workshop. So, you know, they're pretty extensive, but we go out and shoot the red-crowned cranes and whooper swans, the Steller sea eagles, white-tailed eagles, lots of amazing wildlife that's only really there from late January to February, early March, when it's really cold. You know, the cranes, the red-crowned cranes, for example, don't do any mating dances and things until it's really cold. So it's I had someone email me the other day said that her husband is interested in the tour, but she hates the cold. Do I do the tour in warmer seasons? And, you know, obviously the answer is no, because a lot of the action is only there because it is midwinter. So it's kind of, you know, and I'm lucky in that I love cold weather. So I'd give me cold weather and lots of warm clothing any day over really hot weather, which is like in the summers here.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from England. I'm from England. From Nottingham in England, and yeah. So I actually got a bit of a northern accent in England, and people used to make fun of me when I went down to London. And then I came to Japan and learnt Japanese way up north. So I've actually got a northern accent in Japan as well. So I've been made fun of for being a northerner in both countries.
All right. So did you have any questions, Craig?
Well, I think that it would be great if at a later date we could get Martin on, and maybe some of the people that have attended some of his tours, workshops, to talk about that. That could be a whole show in and of itself. But I really appreciate Martin Bailey coming on. And what is the best website address for folks to follow up and contact you, Martin?
I'm going to try and do something here that I've not tried this before. So I'm basically, I don't know if you can see.
Yes,
here we go. So I've got a screen up here. This is, if you go to martinbaileyphotography.com, there are links to everything that I'm into here. And if you go to the very right, there's a workshops link, and that will take you to a website that shows you details of all of the workshops that I've got coming up. So yeah, you can just go down to the bottom there and use the pay buttons to pay your deposit to join us. So there's it's really martinbaileyphotography.com will take you everywhere, but the workshops themselves are at mbpworkshops.com.
All right, thank you very much.
I just noticed that when you were sharing that screen, I think it was upside down. That's probably because you're in Japan.
Was it upside down? I
It
think
wasn't
it's
upside
The
down,
initial
was it?
homepage was not, but I think that other page looked like it was. But we'll be able to see in the recording. It's all good. Um,
Well,
anybody else have any questions for Martin Bailey while we still have him here?
If I have one question, if I ever come to Japan, I'll have to look you up and we can go out and do some shooting. That would be awesome.
Absolutely, yeah, it'd be great.
Right on.
well, where in Japan are you living?
I'm in Tokyo, just on the west side of Tokyo now. Used to live in the center of Tokyo, but since I left my old day job to pursue photography full time, I couldn't afford the rent, so before I even left the old job, I moved out to the west side. The rent's actually only a little bit less than my old apartment, but I've got double the space now, so I have an office and studio in my home now, so which is good.
That's great, thank you. Well, I think we'll call this a day then. How about it, Craig? Anyone has any more last comments to say to your audience? Otherwise,
why don't we do a round robin? Just start right up at the top and let our guests plug a website if they want to, ask any questions if they want to. We'll just go right down the line.
Okay, we are Jordana Wright Photography. I'm Cassius Wright. This is Jordana Wright, and you can view our work at www.jordanawright.com.
thank you. Craig, you want to say?
And we can go right to Jim.
Okay. Of course, Jim Davis, pretty common name, hard to forget that one.
Without an E.
Pardon me?
Without an E.
Yes, Davis, not Davies. Yeah, so nature landscape photographer, if you go to jimmy-d.smugmug.com, you can go and see some of my galleries that I have most of them hidden right now just because I'm reorganizing them, but and also you can check me out on Google+. So, send me a message and we'll get circled up.
Right, thank you. Martin, you will have some closing comments?
Well, I not really. I jumped in at the end there, so I wasn't. It looks like I had a great conversation here. I'm sure that the people that watch this are going to be very happy to see what you're doing.
Well, we hope so.
Yeah. But yeah, there's. I've given my website, martinbaileyphotography.com, and hopefully I'll be able to come join and spend a little bit more time with you guys in the future.
Hopefully, we'll let you know when we have one episode just for you.
Okay.
And Ugo, please.
Okay, I think right now the best way to find me online is at my blog, which is blog.ucphoto.me. That's M-E. And there's an about page there, which links to all my various online identities: Google+, Flickr, Twitter, my portfolio, 500px, all over the place. And
we'll put all these links in the post when we post a link to the download later. And last but not least, Helen.
You can find me on www.helensoteriadis.com. I bet you cannot spell it, so it's a good thing you're going to have the link there. If you want to find me on Google+, just add a /+ to that. I'm on 500px, I'm on Flickr, I'm pretty much everywhere. So.
She shoots everywhere and she's everywhere.
Yes, I am. Cannot miss me. You can't get rid of me.
All right, Craig, you want to say something? Do
you have a photo slideshow you wanted to run on the way out, or did you have that ready?
I'm afraid not. Okay. So
we're good, and they can just go to photohangouts.com, and once you have that site up, I'm sure you'll have links to everybody's websites as well from there.
So thank you to everyone out being here. Craig and Jordana and Jim, Martin, thank you for joining us later. Ugo from Italy, and Helen and me. And us three will go to bed soon because it's 1:30 a.m. here for me. It's 1 hour later for Helen even.
right.
Martin is the fresh guy. He's at the next morning already.
Well, thanks
Yeah,
everybody
it's
again.
8:30 here.
Thanks everybody again for coming, and that's